When my wife asked to borrow a crowbar and GoPro to film some DIY, I was not confident of a good outcome, but I should not have worried because she made this room into something really quite special. So this video is a simple summary of what she did with almost no DIY experience, but a bunch of how-to videos on YouTube. In case you're new to the channel, 9 months ago we left life in the city to live in the middle of nowhere and have been working flat out since we arrived, but not inside the house. There has been an absolute mountain of work to do on the 10 acres that we have here. The only inside work we did was transform our old barn into a workshop and gym. But Jenna could not wait any longer and wanted to make a start on the house.
Something tells me that this has not been opened in a while.
So this is the room she is beginning with. It is what we're calling the snug. It's not a particularly large room and is dominated by the wood burner that is too modern for a property almost 300 years old. The parquet flooring is not in terrible condition and Jen's plan is to save it if possible. Unlike that radiator she uncovered, which got ripped out and thrown away. It turned out it wasn't even connected to the main house plumbing anymore. The first job was to work on the floor with hired floor sanders, both a large belt version and a smaller spinning disc one for getting around the edges. And it turned out this was as easy as it looks, just push the thing around and it does all the work. The only downside was how long it took. This house has a much larger living room, which is where we spend most of our time, so this is a room that will be used for primarily movie night. Hence we fitted our 85-inch TV to the wall as soon as we moved in back in November. This thing is heavy, and because it's so thin it's hard to move around safely. In fact, we transported it here strapped on a giant sheet of plywood. So there was no plans to take it off the wall again, which is why it's been sealed with a plastic dust sheet. Sanding this floor ended up taking the best part of 4 days because it needed to be gone over with 3 different grades of sandpaper, each one creating a smoother finish than the last. And hiring a quality sander to do this was a great idea because this thing did a really good job of sending the majority of the dust into its collection bag. And if you're wondering why the windows have been sealed up, it's because Jen had her plants in the windowsill and didn't want them to get covered in floor dust. She's very protective of her plants. Here they are, having been packed up to move last year. Why didn't she just put them outside the room? No idea. I gave up worrying about what she was doing in here after she asked for a crowbar. Now, although the parquet flooring was in reasonable condition, it wasn't perfect, and there were gaps between some of the tiles as well as a few sections of damage. So once the floor was sanded, Jen used some leftover sawdust which she mixed with a clear filler compound to create a mixture that could then be spread across the entire floor, filling in any imperfections. And again, she has zero experience of anything like this and simply watched YouTube tutorials and crossed her fingers. I got involved with this part of the process because it looked quite fun. Once it was completed, I suddenly found lots of other important things to do because the next step was boring. The floor needed sanding again to remove the excess filler. And then the final stage of renovating the floor, it needed to be sealed. First with a primer, which was simply poured on and spread around with a giant roller on a pole, and after being allowed to dry for a day, a final liquid lacquer was applied and spread out the same way, and that was job done on the floor. Next step was some minor work needed on the walls before they could be painted. In a couple of places this room had some slight damp damage to the existing paint. The walls are 1 meter thick here and solid stone, so no water was coming through from the outside. Rather it was moisture condensing on the cold walls because the room lacked ventilation and wasn't used in the past as often as the other rooms in the house. So a cold room with little ventilation resulting in high relative humidity. That can equal damp. In the future this room is going to be better ventilated, used more often, and is very unlikely to have the same problems. So all that was done here was to remove the old flaking paint, apply an undercoat designed for preventing issues connected with damp, and then any imperfections could be filled ready for painting proper. And step 1 of that process was to apply an undercoat to all the surfaces that were going to get painted in the final off-black colour. And that meant most of the surfaces. Apparently the technical term here is colour drenching. It means the ceiling, the walls, the skirting boards, the door frame, anything not tied down and in the way gets painted. Not only is it a really great look, it also does away with one of the most tedious parts of painting a room, cutting in around the edges. You simply throw paint at everything. And so once the undercoat had been applied and dried, 2 coats of the off-black were applied. And around the TV, all we did was take away the plastic and use a really small roller designed for painting behind radiators to paint the wall 5 or 6 inches back behind the edge of the TV. So the fact the majority of the wall there is not painted is completely invisible. And that was it. The light units got fitted back to the ceiling and all of the dust sheets and plastic were cleared away before the room got its finishing touches, which included a new wood burner. We were able to sell the previous one for a great price online, so purchasing a new, smaller unit, much more in keeping with this room size, didn't end up too expensive. And it now looks like this, and we are incredibly happy with it. There's a couple of things still outstanding. The wood burner needs to be attached to the original flue, and that's a job for an expert, because a wood burner is a fire inside your house, so it's not a DIY task. And the original radiator was taken off the wall so the wall could be painted, but a new burnt red old style radiator is getting fitted back in its place once the plumber gets here in a couple of weeks' time. The only other outstanding item is the door, which Jen had stripped of paint and is currently seeing whether the woodworm damage is repairable, leaving it looking cute and rustic, or whether it will end up going in the wood burner and a new door will be purchased instead. Those issues aside, the room is exactly as we hoped it would be, decorated with a collection of things that we've acquired over the years. We have a rule here about things going on the walls of our house. They need to be things we have created ourselves. If there's pictures going up, for example, they need to be ones we have taken, and everything needs to earn its place here. And the wall colour makes everything absolutely pop. And even better, when the lights are off for movie time, the TV just disappears into the dark black wall, giving it a real cinema feel. And the room is equally appealing in the daytime because all the windows look out onto the stream running beside the property, so the views here are pretty special too. Compared to how it looked just a couple of weeks ago, it's a 100% success, and now exciting to look at moving on to the next rooms. The plan over the next 12 months is to hopefully work through each room of the house. As it turned out this good, do I now feel silly for having worried when Jen asked for a crowbar in the first place? Absolutely not. She actually said, "Can I borrow that wacky thing?" I had every right to be cautious.